Ho, 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 boy! Hello, film nerds. My name is Colin, and welcome to a very special Christmas episode of the Filmmaker Files. Got my hat on, all the Christmas lights behind me, and today I figured we'd do something a little bit different than my normal tutorials or tips videos or whatever. And thought we'd celebrate the holidays in style by talking about cameras. So Christmas is a very special time of year for me, not just because it's a fun time to look at, new gadgets and equipment and pricing things out and realizing I can't afford half the things in my Amazon wish list, but it's also a really special time to me because years and years ago, when I was in the middle school age, I got my very first camcorder. Now later on in January, I'm going to be putting a video out that is a complete history of movie making cameras, like a video essay like this one that I did a long time ago on science fiction films. But today I'm going to talk about my own personal history in video cameras because I have every single camera that I've ever owned in a special holiday episode. So like I said, a long time ago when I was just a wee little lad, I got my very first camcorder for Christmas. I'd always been interested in movies, just going to them with my dad and my grandpa. But up until a certain point, I'd always wanted to be a cartoonist. I'd always had a passion towards drawing and art. And then DVDs started coming out. We started buying more DVDs, and on DVDs were behind the scenes and special features. And I got to see the actual process of people putting together movies. My interest started growing, and the very first camera I got was the Samsung SCD-80. It is this big old honkin' camcorder. I love this thing. I don't think I could ever part ways with this. I shot all of my first things on here. My buddy Kalen, who you've seen on this YouTube channel if you've been with us from the start, him and I took this camera and filmed like everything we could think of. We shot little movies with G.I. Joes, and I'm not talking like stop motion, like just our hands holding G.I. Joes and walking around. And I mean, this is what got me into wanting to do this for a living. Editing on Windows Movie Maker. Some fun features about this camcorder though were the fact that it shot with mini DV tapes. It had everything. It had zoom, it had a viewfinder, you could play things back in the camera. You had to have a cable to hook it up to your computer to transfer all the footage over there, which was, part of the process back then. I had a 400 times digital zoom. It also does this. My nice new fancy camera doesn't even do that. So yeah, this thing was the bee's knees to me back in the day. But eventually I grew tired of shooting with tapes, and wouldn't you know it, a few years down the road, I had another Christmas/birthday gift, and that is this lovely JVC HDD camcorder. The HD does not stand for high definition. It stands for hard disk drive camcorder, because this thing had, I believe, 30 gigabytes of storage space in here. Definitely did not shoot 1080. I'm pretty sure it only went up to 480. I have some super fond memories of this thing. One of the reasons why I bought this is because Henry, also, if you've been watching this channel for a long time, he is one of the people who started off this channel with me. He bought the model exactly like this, but he bought the 60 gigabyte one. I bought the 30 gigabyte one. Also had a micro SD card slot on the bottom, which was pretty cool. I shot tons of short films with this, namely a 10-part series we made called Sword Fight, some of my finest work. We just fought around with swords that we picked up in an antique store and a couple sticks and stuff. Terribly unsafe, but you know what? We had a good time and no one died, so that's a huge check mark in the win category. But I learned a ton about cinematography on this, because going into that high school age and starting to explore, what's it actually like to get that shot that I saw in that movie. We did a lot with this thing, and it's all fond memories. Next up is the Sony HDR CX220. Now this is the camera I've actually shot the least with. Owned it, and I still have it. It's right here. It was our first camera that shot 1080p. I used that JVC all the way up through high school and even just a little bit past. But once we decided to found Amateur Hour, we decided, hey, we should upgrade into the 1080p game. And so we bought this thing collectively. We all chipped in a few bucks, and I believe this thing was 200 bucks, so super cheap. Has all the basic functions you need in a camera. But it was very shortly after we purchased this camera that Henry and I both bought our very first DSLRs. Henry bought a Nikon, something like a D3500, I believe, and I bought a Canon T4i camera because my wife already had Canon lenses, and we wanted to both be able to do photography and videography. She did a lot of photography work. But this is the camera that I really started to actually mature on as a filmmaker, you know, having to actually, you know, work a lens and not just using a little rocker to zoom in and out. Focusing and being able to pull off all these fun tricks with focus, you know. These are all things that you could kind of cheat and do in the camcorders, but the level of control that you had over everything in a DSLR was something that I had no real experience before this with. So I learned so much on the ins and outs of a actual professional camera. And I love how Canon builds their cameras. I know people give Canon a lot of flack now. Back in the day, you know, with their 5D Mark II and Mark III, I mean, they were at the forefront of the DSLR revolution. Canon cameras are built like tanks. It's such a fantastic camera to learn on, and one thing I will always praise Canon for is their menus, the way they set up and organize their cameras are the easiest things in the world. If you're looking for a good starter camera, I don't think you can go wrong with picking up an old used Canon T3i or even a T2i or this T4i or any one of their newer T series. So I shot with that Canon T4i for years. I still actually do work on it. I still use it for photos. I use it for behind the scenes videos. I use it for stop motion animation. A couple other notes about this Canon T4i. I love the size of it. You know, it's big, especially compared to a lot of the mirrorless cameras now that you're seeing. But I love that, you know, it had a big solid grip on it. This wonderful flip out screen that flips all the way around. My new camera can't even do that, but it's just, you know, I love the fact that it had the battery door on the bottom and the SD card slot on the side, which my other camera that I'm about ready to get to did not have that feature. And then up next is the camera that I bought just before the one that I'm filming on right now, and that is the Panasonic LX100. It is a small point and shoot camera, but this little beast can shoot 4K. It does 60 frames per second in 1080p. It's just a really cool little camera, and one of the reasons I bought it was because I was interested in exploring the capabilities of 4K, but I didn't want to break my bank either, and I wasn't sure if my computer could handle it. But the idea of 1080p that was a little bit better than my T4i by a smidge, if you look at it closely enough, but being able to shoot in 60p and 1080 was pretty nice too. And one of the biggest draws to me about this camera was the lens itself, actually. It is a sweet little Leica lens on it, f1.7 at 24 millimeters and f2.8 at 75 millimeters. This is a terrific little camera. Also, if you're looking to learn on a camera, Panasonics are pretty easy to learn on from my experiences. I also love that it had all these great dials on it. You know, you could adjust your aperture, you know, via the lens right there. Your shutter speed was right there on top. I shot a lot of, you know, my more recent stuff on this for actual clients. It was small, so I could throw it on a gimbal, which was super fun to be able to work with, which is one of the reasons why I got this camera, was because I wanted to get into gimbal work. And fun fact, if you're working on larger cameras like the one I'm shooting with now, versus this. Bigger means more money. So having a small camera like this that I could toss on a gimbal kept the cost down. A couple big downsides to the LX100 though were that there's no mic input. It didn't have that flip out screen anymore. 4K was a lot on my computer sometimes, and I definitely missed, you know, being able to change out lenses, although this covered most of the lens range that I like to shoot with, so not a huge deal there. But as much fun as this guy is, eventually I had to make the upgrade, and that's what I'm shooting with right now, and that is the Canon C100. Now, looking at this guy versus the Canon C100 on paper, I mean, you know, this thing looks like it blows it out of the water. You know, it's small, it shoots 4K, it shoots 1080p at 60 frames a second, yada, yada, yada. I could go on and on. I made the choice to move to a C100 for a very specific reason. I'll do a whole nother video covering that. But this thing has been my absolute favorite camera to work with ever. So what is the point that I'm trying to make with this video? Well, I guess other than classic Christmas nostalgia, I think it's important to remember that no matter what camera you're working with, whether it's your phone, your very first camcorder, you just upgraded to a DSLR over the holidays, whatever film you're working on, whether it's super no budget or having $30 to put towards a prop or costume, nobody starts with the best camera making the greatest films. It takes a lot of time and patience and a lot of hard work. Just sticking with something and really seeing it through is just all part of it. So I got my Christmas pajamas on, I've got my Christmas movie, and I'll see you guys later. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.